The alarm screamed through the halls of the Catharan Research Station. Dr. Gentle went through leaves, pressed her six-fingered hands against the viewing window and watched another transport ship explode in the distance. The orange flames died quickly in the cold vacuum of space, taking 3,000 more of her people with it. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked without turning around. Her assistant, young sprout-seeking son, checked his data pad with shaking hands. 47 civilian transports. Maybe a dozen patrol boats. The Vazek destroyed our defense fleet 6 hours ago. Gentle Wind closed her large, dark eyes. In just 3 days, the Vazek Empire had conquered 4 Kitharan worlds. Their massive warships appeared without warning, their soldiers killed without mercy, and their leaders demanded total surrender or complete destruction. The choice was simple: become slaves or become extinct. "The evacuation ships won't make it past their blockade," young Sprout said quietly. "We need help." Gentle Wind turned from the window. Her people looked like tall, thin deer that had learned to walk on 2 legs. Their brown fur was soft, their movements graceful, and their large eyes held only kindness. They had never known war because they had never needed it. The Kitharan Collective had spent 1,000 years building a peaceful society based on farming, art, and science. That peace had made them perfect victims. "Show me the emergency beacon project," Gentle Wind said. Young Sprout led her to a small room filled with computers and strange devices. 3 other scientists worked frantically at their stations, their fur damp with nervous sweat. "We've been working on this for 2 days," said Deep Roots in Learning, the team's youngest member. "It's a distress signal that can reach across the galaxy." "But we can't just call for help from anyone," added Moss on Ancient Stone, an older scientist with gray patches in her fur. "The Vazek have spies everywhere. If we contact the wrong species, they might join the Vazek instead of helping us." Gentle Wind nodded. The galaxy was full of predator species who saw the Kitharans as easy prey. Calling for help could bring even worse enemies to their door. "So how do we find the right species to contact?" she asked. Deep Root smiled for the first time in days. "We've been studying radio signals from across the galaxy. By looking at the types of broadcasts, atmospheric readings, and technology signatures, we can tell what kind of species lives on each world." He pointed to a star chart on his computer screen. "We need to find species like us. Peaceful plant eaters who have advanced technology but don't build weapons of war." "And you found some?" Gentle Wind asked. "Yes." Young Sprout jumped up excitedly. "We found the perfect species. Look at this data." The screen showed information about a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. The numbers and graphs meant nothing to Gentle Wind, but Deep Roots explained them with growing excitement. "This planet has perfect conditions for plant growth. Their radio signals show they love music, art, and peaceful communication. They send messages about farming, education, and taking care of their environment. Best of all, their atmospheric readings show they're definitely plant eaters." "How can you tell that from the air?" Gentle Wind asked. "Oxygen levels," Moss on Ancient Stone replied. "Only worlds with lots of plants have this much oxygen, and the carbon dioxide patterns show massive farming operations. These people grow food, not weapons." "They sound perfect," Gentle Wind said. "Peaceful farmers with advanced technology. They'll understand our situation." Deep Roots nodded eagerly. "We've already prepared the message. It explains who we are, what's happening to us, and asks for help from our fellow peaceful plant eaters." "What about the Vazek?" Gentle Wind asked. "Should we tell them how dangerous they are?" Young Sprout laughed nervously. "We've described the Vazek as the most terrifying predators we've ever seen. 2.5 meters tall, natural armor plating, claws that can cut through metal, and they eat other thinking beings for fun. If that doesn't scare away peaceful farmers, nothing will." Gentle Wind looked out the window again. Another explosion lit up the darkness as the Vazek destroyed a hospital ship. Thousands more of her people died while she watched. "Send the message," she said. Deep Roots activated the beacon. The device hummed to life, sending a powerful signal across space toward the blue-green world. The message traveled faster than light, carrying the desperate plea of a dying civilization. "How long until they receive it?" Gentle Wind asked. "About 3 days," Deep Roots replied. "And if they decide to help, it will take them maybe 3 months to reach us." 3 months, Gentle Wind repeated. She looked at the data about their new allies again. The peaceful farmers seemed like exactly what the Kitharans needed. People who understood the value of life, who grew things instead of destroying them, who would surely help other plant eaters in trouble. "What are they called?" she asked. Deep Roots checked his notes. They call themselves humans, and their planet is called Earth. For the first time in days, Gentle Wind felt hope. These humans sounded wonderful. Peaceful, plant-eating farmers who loved music and art. They would understand the Ketheran way of life. They would want to help. Do you think they'll come? Young Sprout asked. Of course they will, Gentle Wind said confidently. They're just like us. Peaceful people who care about life and growth. When they hear about the Vazek killing innocent farmers and artists, they'll want to help immediately. She imagined the human ships arriving, probably beautiful vessels designed for exploration and trade, crewed by gentle scientists and diplomats. Together, the humans and Ketherans would find a peaceful solution to the Vazek problem. Maybe they could negotiate or relocate the Ketheran people to safer worlds. I just hope they're not too scared of the Vazek, Moss on Ancient Stone said worriedly. We described them as the most terrifying predators imaginable. What if the humans are too frightened to help? They'll help, Gentle Wind said firmly. Peaceful species always help each other. It's what makes us better than the predators. Outside the window, the Vazek ships continued their deadly work. But inside the research station, 4 Ketheran scientists felt hope for the first time since the invasion began. They had found allies among the stars, fellow plant-eaters who would understand their situation and rush to help. They had no way of knowing that their perfect classification system had one small flaw. On the blue-green world called Earth, something was already moving in response to their message. But it wasn't what they expected. In the deep black of space, ships began to gather, ships built like weapons, crewed by creatures who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to hunt and kill. Ships belonging to a species that had fought its way to the top of the food chain on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. The humans were coming, and they were very, very hungry for a fight. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UES Indomitable, reading the alien message for the 5th time. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, their faces lit by the glow of computer screens and tactical displays. The massive warship hummed with activity as humanity prepared for its first contact with alien life. Ma'am, the translation team says they're confident about the message content, reported Commander Jackson, her second-in-command. These Ketherans are definitely asking for help. Sarah nodded and looked at the message again. The aliens had been very polite in their request. They explained that they were peaceful plant-eaters who lived quiet lives farming and studying art. They described their enemy, the Vazek Empire, in great detail. Most importantly, they had specifically asked for help from fellow peaceful herbivores because they had studied Earth's radio signals and decided humans were just like them. They think we're vegetarians, Sarah said with a slight smile. Yes, ma'am, Commander Jackson replied. They seem very excited about meeting other peaceful plant-eaters who they assume will understand their situation. Dr. James Park, the mission's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent his whole career dreaming of this moment. First contact with alien intelligence. Unfortunately, the reality was more complicated than he had imagined. Admiral, I've been studying their data about us, Dr. Park said. It's actually quite impressive. They correctly identified our agricultural worlds, our peaceful broadcasts, and our environmental protection efforts. Their mistake was assuming that a species that grows a lot of plants must only eat plants. Easy mistake to make, Sarah said. They probably don't have omnivores on their world. Lieutenant Torres, the communications officer, looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving more messages from the Ketheran system. It sounds like the situation is getting worse fast. Sarah walked over to Torres's station and listened to the translated messages. The Ketherans were begging for immediate help. Their evacuation ships were being destroyed, their colonies were being bombed, and their people were being killed by the thousands. How long to reach their system at maximum speed? Sarah asked. 3 months, ma'am, replied the navigation officer. That's pushing our engines to the limit. Sarah looked around the command center. The Indomitable was one of 12 ships in the hastily assembled human expeditionary fleet. Each ship was a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, battle-tested and ready for war. The crews were volunteers, mostly combat veterans who had jumped at the chance to fight in humanity's first interstellar war. Ma'am, Dr. Park said carefully, there's something we should discuss. These Ketherans are expecting peaceful farmers to show up and help them negotiate with their enemies. They're not expecting a military fleet. Doctor, they're being exterminated, Sarah replied firmly. Right now, while we're talking, innocent people are dying. I don't care if they think we're farmers or warriors or dancing bears. We're going to help them. But they might be scared of us, Dr. Park continued. Look at their description of the Vazek. They're terrified of anything that looks like a predator. When they see us, Sarah cut him off. We'll deal with that when we get there. Right now, the priority is stopping a genocide. She turned to address the entire command center. Listen up, everyone. We're about to make history. First contact with alien life, and we're doing it while fighting a war. The situation is simple. Peaceful aliens are being wiped out by aggressive predators. Our job is to stop that from happening. The crew listened intently. These were men and women who had fought pirates in asteroid fields and rebels on colony worlds. They were used to being the cavalry riding to the rescue. The aliens we're helping think we're peaceful farmers, Sarah continued. They're going to be surprised when they meet us. But that's their problem to deal with. Our problem is the Vazek Empire. She activated the main display, showing what little data they had about Vazek ships and weapons. The images were blurry and incomplete, but they showed large, heavily armed vessels designed for destruction. According to the Catharans, the Vazek are the most terrifying predators they've ever seen, Sarah said. 2.5 meters tall, natural armor, and they eat other sentient species for fun. The Catharans seem to think this makes them unstoppable. A few chuckles came from the crew. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Persistent spoke up from the communication screen. Admiral, did you tell them what humans eat? I don't think that would help, Captain, Sarah replied with a grin. But I think they're about to find out. Dr. Park raised his hand nervously. Admiral, I really think we should prepare them for what we are. When they see human ships, human weapons, human soldiers. Doctor, with respect, we don't have time for a cultural exchange program, Sarah said. Every minute we spend talking is a minute more that innocent people are dying. We'll sort out the misunderstandings later. Commander Jackson stepped forward. Ma'am, all ships report ready for departure. The fleet is assembled and waiting for your orders. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the 12 human warships. Each one was built like a flying tank, designed to fight in the hostile environments of deep space. The Indomitable itself had enough firepower to level a small moon. The destroyers were fast and deadly. The cruisers were tough and well-armed. And the supply ships were built to keep fighting even when everything went wrong. It was exactly the kind of fleet you'd send to fight a war. Which, Sarah reflected, was exactly what they were about to do. Open a channel to all ships, Sarah ordered. Channel open. Ma'am. This is Admiral Chen to all ships of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We have our orders. Proceed to the Kitharin system at maximum speed. Our mission is simple. Stop the genocide and save as many lives as we can. The enemy thinks they're the biggest predators in the galaxy. Let's show them what a real predator looks like. All ships acknowledge and are ready to depart, Commander Jackson reported. Take us out, Sarah ordered. The fleet moved as one, 12 deadly ships accelerating toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, they left a world that had never known defeat in war. Ahead of them waited aliens who thought they were about to be rescued by peaceful farmers. Dr. Park stood beside Admiral Chen as Earth grew smaller behind them. Admiral, what do you think will happen when the Kitharans see us? Sarah watched the stars ahead of them, thinking about gentle plant eaters meeting human soldiers for the first time. Doctor, I think it's going to be the most awkward first contact in galactic history. And the Vazek? Sarah's smile turned cold. The Vazek are about to learn why humans are the only species on Earth that hunts for sport. Captain Melody of Seven Winds pressed herself against the back wall of her ship's bridge as another explosion shook the hull. Through the main viewing screen, she could see Vazek warships systematically destroying the last Kitharin evacuation fleet. Bright flashes of weapons fire lit up the darkness of space as transport after transport was torn apart. Captain, we've lost another 3 ships, reported her navigation officer, calm waters running deep. His voice shook with fear and exhaustion. They had been running for 18 hours straight, and the Vazek ships were still hunting them down one by one. How many civilians are left? Melody asked. Maybe 30,000 spread across 12 ships, Calm Waters replied. The Vazek are herding us toward their main fleet. They want to capture us alive, Melody shuddered. She knew what the Vazek did to prisoners. The stories from the conquered worlds were too horrible to believe, but the evidence was everywhere. The Vazek didn't just want to rule other species. They wanted to hunt them for entertainment. Captain, called out their communications officer, I'm picking up new ships on long-range sensors. They're coming from outside the system. Melody felt a surge of hope. Is it the humans? Are they finally here? For 3 months, the surviving Kitherans had waited for their peaceful allies to arrive. The humans had sent several messages promising help, but they had been strangely vague about when they would arrive and what kind of help they would bring. Yes, Captain. 12 ships approaching fast. They should be here in 30 minutes. Melody felt relief wash over her. Finally, their fellow plant eaters had arrived. She imagined beautiful human ships filled with diplomats and scientists, people who would understand the Ketheran way of life and find a peaceful solution to this crisis. Patch me through to the human fleet, she ordered. Channel open, Captain. Human vessels, this is Captain Melody of Seven Winds of the Ketheran Refugee Fleet. We are so grateful you came to help us. We have been waiting for our peaceful brothers to arrive. The response came immediately, but something was wrong with the voice. It was too deep, too rough, like the growl of a predator. Ketheran vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We're here to help. What's your current situation? Admiral Chen, we have 12 ships with 30,000 civilians. The Vazek have us trapped and they're destroying us one by one. But now that you're here, surely we can negotiate with them. As fellow peaceful species, perhaps we can find a solution that doesn't involve violence. There was a long pause before the human admiral replied. Captain, we'll discuss negotiation strategies later. Right now, I need you to move your ships away from the combat zone. We're going to engage the Vazek fleet. Engage them? Melody asked in confusion. But you're farmers and artists like us. Surely you didn't bring weapons. Another pause. Captain, trust me. Just get your people to safety. Melody was about to ask more questions when her sensor officer, Bright Star Dancing, made a sound of pure terror. Captain, you need to see this. Melody looked at the tactical display and felt her blood turn to ice. The human ships were not the beautiful exploration vessels she had imagined. They were enormous, angular, and covered with weapons. They looked like flying predators built for killing and destruction. By the seven lights, she whispered. What are those things? Those are the humans, Bright Star Dancing said in a voice barely above a whisper. But they can't be. Humans are peaceful plant eaters. They grow food and make art. They're supposed to be like us. Bright Star Dancing adjusted the sensors for a closer look at the lead human ship. The image that appeared on screen made everyone on the bridge step backward in fear. The ship was massive and gray, shaped like a dagger pointed at the enemy. Weapons bristled from every surface. Launch bays for smaller attack craft lined its sides like the mouths of hungry beasts, and painted on its hull in red letters was a name that seemed to mock everything the Ketherans believed about their gentle allies. UES Indomitable. Captain, calm waters running deep said shakily, I'm reading the biosignatures from the human ships. They're not plant eaters, and what do you mean? Their ships are full of carnivores. Captain, predators. I'm reading canine teeth, forward-facing eyes, and body chemistry that screams apex hunter from every deck. Melody felt the universe spinning around her. Everything they had believed about the humans was wrong. These weren't peaceful farmers coming to help. These were predators, possibly worse predators than the Vazek. Open a channel to the human admiral, she ordered with a trembling voice. Channel open. Admiral Chen, there seems to have been a misunderstanding. We thought you were peaceful herbivores like us. We didn't realize you were predators? Admiral Chen's voice was amused rather than angry. Yeah, we figured out there was some confusion about that. Don't worry about it right now, Captain. We're still here to help. But you're hunters. You kill things. How do we know you won't hunt us too? Because right now we're hunting the things that are hunting you. Before Melody could respond, the human ships opened fire. The difference between human weapons and anything the Ketherans had ever seen was like the difference between a gentle rainfall and a hurricane. Streams of energy and projectiles reached across space to strike the Vazek ships with devastating force. The Vazek vessels, which had seemed so impossibly powerful just moments before, began to explode one after another. Captain, Bright Star Dancing reported in amazement. The humans just destroyed 4 Vazek cruisers in the first salvo. On the communication channel, they could hear Admiral Chen giving orders to her fleet. Her voice was calm and professional, like she was organizing a farming operation instead of directing a battle. All ships, maintain formation. Destroyers, sweep the flanks. Cruisers, focus fire on their command ship. I want this over quickly. Melody watched in fascination and horror as the human ships moved through space like a pack of hunting animals. They worked together with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly what the others would do. And everywhere they went, Vazek ships died. "Captain, the Vazek are trying to retreat," Calm Waters Running Deep reported. "Are the humans letting them go?"
"No, Captain."
"They're hunting them down." Indeed, the smaller human ships were chasing the fleeing Vazek vessels like wolves pursuing deer. There was no mercy, no hesitation, no negotiation. The humans had come to fight, and they were very, very good at it. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "Admiral Chen is hailing us again." "Put her through." "Captain Melody, this is Admiral Chen. The Vazek fleet has been neutralized. Your people are safe. We'd like to arrange a meeting to discuss the situation." Melody looked around at her terrified crew. They had been saved by creatures that were everything they feared most. Predators who hunted and killed with casual efficiency. But those same predators had just rescued 30,000 Kitheran civilians. "Admiral," Melody said carefully, "thank you for saving us. But I must ask, what do you want from us?" Admiral Chen's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Captain, we want the same thing we've always wanted. To help people who need help. The fact that we're not what you expected doesn't change that." Melody looked out at the wreckage of the Vazek fleet floating in space. In 30 minutes, the humans had accomplished what the entire Kitheran military couldn't do in 3 months. "Admiral Chen," she said slowly, "I think we need to have a very long conversation." "Yes, Captain. I think we do." War leader Kresh Thun stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his prey scatter before him like frightened insects. The Kitheran ships were pathetic things built for beauty rather than battle. Their hulls cracked like eggs when his weapons touched them, and their crews died without even trying to fight back. It was exactly the kind of hunt the Vazek Empire loved. "War leader, we have destroyed another transport," reported his tactical officer, Bloodfang thirsting. 7,000 more prey things are dead." Kresh Thun nodded with satisfaction. The Vazek were 2.5 meters of muscle, bone, and natural armor. Their ancestors had hunted across their homeworld until nothing else lived there. Then they had taken to the stars to find new prey. For 300 years they had conquered species after species, adding new worlds to their hunting grounds. The Kitharans had been the most satisfying prey yet. They were intelligent enough to understand what was happening to them, but too weak to fight back. "Perfect victims. How many prey ships remain?" Kresh Thun asked. 12 transports with maybe 30,000 survivors," Bloodfang thirsting replied. "They're trying to reach the edge of the system, but we'll catch them long before they can escape." "Good. Signal the fleet to tighten the net. I want them captured alive. The Emperor wants fresh hunting stock for the gladiator pits." Kresh Thun was imagining the fear in Kitheran eyes when his sensor operator, sharp claw striking, suddenly made a sound of surprise. "War leader, I'm detecting new ships entering the system. 12 vessels approaching fast." Kresh Thun felt a moment of irritation. "More Kitheran ships? We thought we destroyed their entire fleet." "No, War leader. These are different. The signatures don't match any known Kitheran design. Put them on screen." The main display showed 12 ships approaching from deep space. Kresh Thun studied them with interest. They were smaller than his dreadnoughts, but much larger than Kitheran vessels. And unlike the graceful curves of Kitheran ships, these new vessels were all sharp angles and aggressive lines. "They look like weapons," Sharp Claw Striking observed. "Any species that builds ships like that might be useful allies," Kresh Thun mused. "Open a communication channel." "Channel open, War Leader." "Unknown vessels, this is War Leader Kresh Thun of the Vazek Empire. You are entering a hunting ground that belongs to us. State your intentions." The response came in a language the computers quickly translated. The voice was calm and controlled, but there was something about it that made Kresh Thun's combat instincts twitch. "Vazek vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You will cease your attack on the Kitheran civilians and withdraw from this system immediately." Kresh Thun laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Admiral Chen, you are greatly outnumbered. We have 60 ships to your 12. If you leave now, we will allow you to depart in peace. War Leader, this is your final warning. Cease fire and withdraw. And if we refuse, then we will stop you." Kresh Thun's laugh grew louder. These humans, whatever they were, seemed to think 12 ships could threaten the might of the Vazek Empire. They were about to learn what real predators could do. "Humans, you have made a fatal mistake. Prepare to join your prey friends in death." He cut the channel and turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them! The Vazek fleet opened fire, sending streams of plasma and missiles across space toward the human ships. Kreshthun expected to see the enemy vessels destroyed instantly, just like every other species that had dared to challenge Vazek might. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships moved. They didn't just change course or try to run away. They moved like living things, like pack hunters that had spotted prey. One moment they were in formation at long range. The next they were scattered across the battlefield, closing distance at speeds that seemed suicidal. War leader? Sharp claw striking called out in confusion. The humans are approaching to ramming distance. They're going to ram us? Kreshthun asked in disbelief. Ramming was a desperation tactic used by defeated enemies, not an opening move. No, war leader. They're attacking at close range. The human ships swept through the Vazek formation like sharks through a school of fish. Their weapons were different from anything Kreshthun had seen before. Instead of the clean energy beams favored by most civilized species, the humans used massive projectile weapons that hurled chunks of metal at incredible speeds. They're using kinetic weapons. Bloodfang Thirsting reported in amazement. Who still uses kinetic weapons? Species that want to make sure their enemies stay dead, Kreshthun muttered, watching a human destroyer punch holes through a Vazek cruiser's armor. But the truly disturbing thing wasn't the weapons. It was the way the humans fought. They moved through the asteroid field like they belonged there, using the rocks as cover and weapons. One human ship actually grabbed an asteroid with tractor beams and threw it at a Vazek dreadnought. War leader, the cruiser Fleshrender is requesting permission to retreat, Bloodfang Thirsting reported. They say the humans are fighting like madmen. Vazek do not retreat from inferior numbers, Kreshthun snarled. But privately, he was beginning to understand his subordinates' fear. These humans didn't fight like civilized beings. They fought like wild animals. The battle turned into a nightmare when the humans started boarding actions. War leader, they've breached the hull of the destroyer Bone Crusher, Sharp Claw Striking reported. Boarding parties are fighting in the corridors. Kreshthun had expected to hear that his warriors had quickly dealt with the invaders. The Vazek were born fighters, natural predators with claws and armor. What species could match them in personal combat? The answer came through the communication system. Panicked screams from Vazek warriors. They're not dying. Came the terrified voice of a Vazek soldier. We claw them and they keep fighting. They're wearing metal skin and carrying weapons that burn through everything. Impossible, Kreshthun growled. No prey species fights better than Vazek warriors. But the reports kept coming. Human soldiers in powered armor were fighting their way through Vazek ships with weapons that seemed designed specifically for killing things in confined spaces. They used explosives, energy weapons, and projectile guns with casual efficiency. War leader, Bloodfang Thirsting said quietly, I don't think these humans are prey. Kreshthun was beginning to reach the same conclusion. No prey species fought like this. The humans moved and acted like apex predators, like creatures that had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill other, dangerous things. The realization hit him when he watched a damaged human destroyer ram straight into a Vazek dreadnought. Instead of trying to save their ship, the human crew had turned it into a weapon. The explosion took out both vessels, but Kreshthun could hear the human captain broadcasting a final message. From Earth, with love. They were willing to die to win. That wasn't prey behavior. That was the behavior of a species that had never learned to surrender. War leader, we've lost 14 ships, Sharp Claw Striking reported. The humans have only lost 3. How is that possible? They're better at this than we are. The words hit Kreshthun like a physical blow. The Vazek had never met a species that was better at warfare than they were. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, the ultimate hunters. But these humans were hunting them. War leader, the fleet is requesting permission to withdraw, Bloodfang Thirsting said urgently. If we stay, they'll destroy us all. Kreshthun looked at the tactical display. Half his fleet was gone and the humans were still coming. They fought like the universe owed them money. Like defeat wasn't even a possibility they considered. Signal the fleet, he said finally. Emergency withdrawal. Full retreat. But war leader, the Emperor will be furious if we retreat from inferior numbers. The Emperor will be more furious if we lose the entire fleet to a species that hunts hunters. As the surviving Vazek ships fled toward the edge of the system, Kreshthun tried to understand what had just happened. For the first time in Vazek history, they had met a species that was deadlier than they were. Behind them, the human ships didn't pursue. They simply regrouped around the Kithran survivors like guard dogs protecting a flock. Kreshthun made a mental note to warn the Emperor about these humans. They weren't just another prey species. They were something the Vazek had never encountered before. Predators that hunted other predators, and they were very, very good at it. 6 months after the battle, Dr. James Park sat across from Deep Roots in Learning in what had once been a Vazek prison camp and was now a refugee settlement. The young Kithran scientist was slowly getting used to being in the same room as a human, though he still jumped slightly whenever Dr. Park moved too quickly. "The psychological profiles are fascinating," Deep Root said, reviewing his datapad with shaking hands. "Your species shows every indicator of being apex predators, yet you're trying to protect other species instead of hunting them." Dr. Park nodded patiently. These sessions had become a daily routine as both species tried to understand each other. The Kitharans were slowly accepting that their rescuers were actually dangerous predators, while the humans were learning to move and speak more carefully around their nervous allies. "It's not that complicated," Dr. Park explained for the 100th time. "Humans are social hunters. We evolved to work together to bring down threats to our group. Other humans, dangerous animals, environmental hazards. Our instinct is to protect the pack. But we're not your pack," Deep Roots pointed out. "We're a completely different species." "Humans have a flexible definition of pack," Dr. Park said with a smile. "We've been adopting other species for thousands of years. Dogs, cats, horses. Even some humans adopt orphaned wild animals. When we see something helpless being threatened, our instinct is to help." Deep Roots made notes on his pad. "So you hunt hunters to protect non-hunters?" "Something like that." The conversation was interrupted by Captain Melody of Seven Winds, who entered the room with her usual nervous energy. Over the past months, she had become the unofficial liaison between the two species, though she still couldn't be in the same room as Admiral Chen without breaking into nervous sweats. "Dr. Park, the Admiral wants to see you," Melody said. "There's been another message from the Vazek Empire." Dr. Park stood up carefully, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle the Kitharans. "What kind of message?" "A warning to other species about humans," Melody replied. "They're calling you Deathworld predators and advising everyone to avoid contact." Dr. Park sighed. The aftermath of first contact had been even more complicated than the battle itself. Word of the human victory had spread quickly through the galaxy, causing panic among predator species and hope among their victims. "Are other species listening to the warning?" he asked. "Some are," Melody said, "but we're also getting messages from other prey species asking for help. 3 different civilizations have sent distress calls in the past week." Dr. Park followed Melody through the settlement, noting how the Kitharans moved carefully out of his path. They weren't running in terror anymore, which was progress, but they still treated every human like a dangerous wild animal that might attack without warning. The irony wasn't lost on him. The Kitharans had called for help from peaceful plant eaters and gotten apex predators instead. But those same predators had turned out to be exactly what they needed. Admiral Chen was waiting in the command center that had been set up in the settlement's main building. The room was designed to accommodate both species, with high ceilings for the tall Kitharans and reinforced furniture for the heavier humans. "Doctor, we need to discuss our next move," Admiral Chen said without preamble. 3 more species have asked for protection from predator empires. The Delicate Song Collective is being invaded by the Razormaw dynasty. The Gentle Current civilization is under attack by something called the Blood Tide Consortium. And there's a species called the Soft Light Commune that's being hunted by the Ironfang Empire. Dr. Park looked at the star charts Admiral Chen had spread across the table. Red dots marked the locations of ongoing conflicts, while blue dots showed the positions of peaceful species calling for help. "How many predator empires are out there?" he asked. "According to our new Kitharan friends, at least 20 major ones," Admiral Chen replied. "The galaxy has been divided into hunting grounds for centuries. Predator species conquer and enslave prey species, then move on to find new victims. And now they know about us," Dr. Park said. "Now they know about us," Admiral Chen confirmed. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Before Dr. Park could answer, Deep Roots in Learning rushed into the room, his fur standing on end with excitement. "Admiral Chen, Dr. Park, you need to see this," he said breathlessly. We've been monitoring galactic communications and something amazing is happening. He activated a holographic display that showed message traffic across known space. Streams of data flowed between star systems like a vast web of light. The predator species are panicking, Deep Roots explained. The Vazek sent out warnings about humans to every empire they know. Now all the hunting species are arguing about what to do. Admiral Chen studied the display with interest. What kind of arguments? Some want to form an alliance to fight humans, Deep Roots replied. Others want to avoid human space entirely. A few are even suggesting they should stop hunting other species because it might attract human attention. Dr. Park couldn't help but smile. They're afraid of us. Very afraid, Deep Roots confirmed. But that's not the amazing part. Look at this. The display changed to show different colored streams of data. The prey species are talking to each other for the first time in galactic history, Deep Roots said with growing excitement. They're sharing information, coordinating defenses, and asking each other for help. The Catheran rescue has inspired prey species across the galaxy. Admiral Chen leaned forward. They're forming an alliance? Not exactly an alliance, Deep Roots said. More like a mutual protection network. Species that have never communicated before are now working together to defend against predator attacks. And they want humans to help coordinate the defense, Melody added, entering the room with another data pad. We're receiving requests for military advisors, defense planning, and direct intervention. Dr. Park looked at Admiral Chen. Ma'am, I think we accidentally started a galactic revolution. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the star charts and data streams. Finally, she looked up at the assembled group. Doctor, what's your professional opinion? Can humans work with prey species long-term? Dr. Park thought about the past 6 months. The fear, the misunderstandings, the gradual building of trust between species that should have been natural enemies. I think so, he said finally. It won't be easy. Prey species will always be nervous around us and we'll have to be careful not to trigger their fear responses. But humans are good at protecting things. It's what we do. And what about the predator species? Admiral Chen asked. They'll have to learn to live in a galaxy where hunting other sentients has consequences, Dr. Park replied. Some will adapt. Others will try to fight. A few might even change their ways entirely. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Deep Roots, Melody. What do your people think about humans taking a larger role in galactic affairs? The two Kitherans exchanged glances. Deep Roots spoke first. Admiral, 3 months ago my people thought you were the most terrifying predators in the universe. We were right about that, but we were wrong about what it meant. You don't hunt us, Melody added. You hunt the things that hunt us. You're predators that prey on predators. Guardian predators, Deep Roots said, trying out the new term. Hunters that hunt hunters to protect those who cannot hunt. Admiral Chen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the refugee settlement where humans and Kitherans worked side by side despite their fundamental differences. Doctor, send a message to Earth, she said finally. Tell them we're going to need more ships. How many more, Admiral? Admiral Chen smiled grimly. All of them. It looks like humanity just became the galactic police force. Outside the window, human soldiers helped Catheran engineers rebuild their damaged city. In the distance, human ships patrolled the system, keeping watch for any threat that might harm the gentle plant eaters they had sworn to protect. It wasn't the first contact any of them had imagined. But it was exactly what the galaxy needed. Predators who had learned to hunt evil instead of innocence. The age of unchallenged predator empires was over. The age of the guardian predators had begun.